Hi there, I'm Rod Bergeron, and thanks for joining me for another quick and easy watercolor painting. Today we're going to be working very loosely, and I guess I work loosely most of the time, but I really like working loose because it doesn't, there's no rules. I just put, so that's some ultramarine deep that's on there. And I'm not going to rinse this brush out, and I'm just going to pick up some Payne's gray, put some Payne's gray across there in a few places, and just make a quick swoop across the bottom. All right, the reason I like using the big 3/4 inch brush is it really helps me stay pretty loose. You see how that's starting to creep up there? I'm not really going for that, but let's see what happens anyways. I'm going to rinse this brush out. I'm going to pick up some sap green, and I'm going to introduce some sap green in a few places, like that. And again, I'm not going to rinse this brush out. And I'm going to put this brush into my yellow. I'm going to suck up a little bit of this yellow here. I'm going to touch this yellow in a few places. And I'm going to use that green-yellow mixture across the bottom there, okay? Pick up a little bit more of that, make it a little bit more intense. All right, so let's scribe into this a little bit. So this is my #1 watercolor brush, and I've sharpened the end of it here with a X-Acto knife, a utility knife. And I'm just going to put a couple of scribe marks in here, like that. Just to indicate where some trees might be. I'm going to do the same thing across here, make some lines that sort of look like brush a little bit. Now I'm going to take this brush now, and I am going to rinse it out, and I'm going to pick up some sienna that I have here, make that a little bit more intense. And I'm just going to touch this in a few places. The same with this, I'm just going to touch that in a few places and let that sienna bleed together with that green that's on there, and it should start to turn a little bit orangey brown. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of a swoop of sienna across there. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that, make it a little bit more intense. And you see I touched that, and that started to allow that green color to come down into here. I'm going to get a little bit more sienna right off the palette, and we're going to scribe into this also. Put a little bit more on there, a little bit more intensely. And I'm going to take my #1 watercolor brush. I should say the sharpened end off my #1 watercolor brush. And when you scribe out of that sienna, you're going to get a red line. So whatever color you scribe out of, you should get that color of a line. Okay, so you've seen I just scribed out of that dark green. That light green is probably going to give me a light green line, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's put yellow ochre across here. All right, so I'm going to rinse my brush off, pick up a little bit more yellow ochre fairly intensely, and one swoop from one side to the other, okay? So load your brush up with as much as it'll hold, and one swoop all the way across. All right, I'm gonna pick up a little bit more yellow ochre, and I'm gonna put some of that in a few places here. I'm also gonna put some yellow ochre up here. Let's see what's gonna happen to that. Now, when I look at this, I think it doesn't really have much darkness in it. And that's a problem in paintings. You can see where there's a lot of color variation and stuff, but there's really not a lot of darkness. So you could go to black, and you could go to Payne's gray, but I'm gonna pick up blue right off my palette, okay? And I'm just gonna touch this in a few places, like that. Maybe make a little swoop here with some. And again, the same thing, we're gonna go grab our sharpened stick, barbecue skewer, whatever you got. I'm gonna draw some more lines out of there. That's turning out not too bad there. I think one more little trick that we could do is we could drop some salt in a few places. I'm gonna drop some salt across the top up here. and across the top up here. And this isn't a perfect science. You sort of have to just go with wherever the salt lands, and then just let it dry and see what we get. All right. So don't try to augment this too much. Once you kind of get it onto the page, just let it dry. All right. And you're better off to let it air dry than to use a hair dryer or anything on it. The longer it takes to dry, the more that salt is going to get to react with that paint. All right, let's see what we get. All right, let's have a look at this. So look at what this salt has done here. And what the salt did across here. All these, and look at this. It really looks like trees sort of off in the distance. I think the one thing about this is you have to get into your head that you have to drop the salt into the wet areas. So salt onto dry paper doesn't do anything for you. So it's got to be the salt into anything wet. And that turned out pretty cool as far as I'm concerned. All right. Thanks for watching. If you have a question or a comment, please leave it in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know where you're from. If you could drop me a comment and let me know where you're watching from, I'd really appreciate it. And as always, if you're a subscriber, thanks a lot. And if you're not currently a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks a lot for watching today. And we'll see you again real soon. Or I guess you'll see me real soon. Thanks a lot.